Welcome to Science from Your Sofa. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Emily.
And in this episode, we're going to answer some of your questions about the aquatic invasive species of Lake George.
First off, what is an invasive species? By definition, an invasive species is an organism that is non-native to an area whose introduction causes or is likely to cause some form of ecological or economic harm to the area in question. So how many invasive species are in Lake George? Lake George has 6 aquatic invasive species. 2 of them are plants, Eurasian watermilfoil and curly-leaf pondweed, and the other 4 invasive species are animals. We have Chinese mystery snails, the spiny water flea, Asian clams, and zebra mussels.
So a very common question we get about the invasive species of Lake George is, what does Eurasian watermilfoil look like? Well, Eurasian watermilfoil has feathered leaves, and those leaves whorl around the stem, so it's circular around the stem. Each of those leaves then have 12 to 21 leaflets, so little leaf feathers coming off. Let's take a look in Lake George and really see what that milfoil looks like. As you can see, this plant grows tall and thick and can easily take over an area of the lake. Eurasian watermilfoil crowds out native plants, reducing biodiversity, diminishing fish habitat, and negatively impacting our wetland habitats. This plant easily takes over because it is spread through fragmentation, meaning that even a very small piece of this aquatic plant can float away, reroot, and begin a new colony.
How can you tell the difference between the native mussel and the invasive Asian clam? The mussels that are native to Lake George tend to be larger in size than the invasive Asian clam. Asian clams are small, round, bivalve clams, and they typically don't get larger than 1.5 inches. Let's take a look in the lake and see what they look like underwater. Here in Sandy Bay, you can see both the small, yellowish Asian clams and the larger dark colored mussels. Asian clams have the ability to produce hundreds of juveniles per day, can spread rapidly, and reach densities up to 8,000 clams per square meter. They are a threat to water quality because they excrete significant amounts of nutrients, particularly nitrogen, that can stimulate the growth of algae and foul the water. 2 other invasive species, zebra mussels and the Chinese mystery snail, also have distinguishing characteristics that help with identification. Zebra mussels have tiny D-shaped shells with a striped pattern of dark and light colors, much like a zebra. For the Chinese mystery snail, its most distinguishing characteristic is its size. The Chinese mystery snail can reach over 1.5 inches in size, and that is much larger than any of the native snails in Lake George. So where are the invasive species in Lake George? The invasive species in Lake George are spread throughout the entire lake. There are about 150 known Eurasian watermilfoil locations, 28 known Asian clam locations, 11 zebra mussel locations, and 2 Chinese mystery snail locations.
So everyone plays a role in preventing the spread of invasive species into Lake George. So what can you do? Well, of course, trailer boats are the main vector of spread of invasive species into Lake George. And so on Lake George, we have the mandatory boat inspection program. So any boats arriving at Lake George have to meet the clean, drained, and dried standards. So how do you ensure everything's clean, drained, and dried? Well, it's by inspecting everything to meet that clean standard. Now, we talk about boats, but it also means your fishing gear. It means your life jackets, your sand toys that you're playing with at the beach. It's your floats. Anything that you're using in the water needs to be inspected before you take it to another water body. You also have to make sure that those things are drained. So make sure there isn't any standing water in the live well or in any bait containers that you have from fishing. And making sure everything's dried. And so once again, draining your bilges and your motors and just making sure we don't have any water droplets so that we aren't spreading those small invasive species, things like the spiny water flea that we can't see. Now, another vector of spread is releasing invasive species. So never release any of your unwanted fish that you had as pets, those goldfish, those turtles. They can all be invasive species in our waters.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Science from Your Sofa. If you would like to learn more about a specific invasive species, feel free to comment the name below, and we can make it a topic to one of our future Science from Your Sofa episodes.